What is mantra? What a great question. And I'm so glad that you have asked. So today I'm going to cover the significance of mantra, why we chant in Kundalini Yoga, and what are the benefits of using sound as a healing tool. So all of this and just a little bit more practice at the end of today's session. So let's start with some basics about what is mantra. And so let's start there. What is mantra? Before we begin, my name is Salimah, yoga therapist. And if you've made it here to my channel, it's because you found Kundalini Yoga and you're curious about how the practice works and all the things that you can learn from it. So the first thing to consider is a really wide perspective, and that is to consider the universe itself, this vastness that we exist in as human beings. And the beginning of the universe, according to the ancient yogis, was sound. And so the beginning of everything is a vibration. And if you sit very quietly, you can actually hear the humming of the universe. A lot of times that's described as the sound of Om. And Om is a sound chanted in Hatha Yoga, and it's part of a spiritual tradition that links the human, the finite, with the infinite. And so first there is sound. There's frequency, there is sound there, and then there is the material. So you could say that as we speak things, as we think, because thinking is also vibration, as we do those things, thinking and speaking, making sound, we start to bring ideas, thoughts, relationships into manifestation. So that's the power of sound itself. And you may have explored this, you may have experienced this when you're listening to music and maybe your mood is a little bit low and you hear your favorite song and everything just feels better. Or you hear the sound of a loved one's voice, or you sing to yourself, or you hear your favorite mantra. These are all indicators to us of the truth of this idea that sound can uplift. And in that, you can think about mantra as a link between the finite and the infinite. Powerful idea. And so the idea of mantra is that it is a repetitive sound, a sacred sound in a sacred language. And that's the way that we use it in spiritual traditions, yogic traditions, religious traditions. You might have come across this and called them hymns or carols. In Christian traditions, you might have heard this as mantra or shabads or ginans in other religious and spiritual traditions. These are ways of evoking our connection through sound to the infinite. And it's a really powerful way to remind ourselves about what we're doing here. And I think that's the really powerful aspect of it. So let's go in and think about sacred sounds. So mantras are part of a sacred technology, and that means that languages like Arabic, Latin, Sanskrit, Gurmukhi, these are all sacred languages used to connect the finite with the infinite. And so when we chant these mantras in sacred languages, we can almost bypass the meaning and actually look to the sensation. How does it feel when it's moving around in your mouth? What is the sound and what does that feeling evoke in your ears? And those are all really important aspects because the meaning of mantra is like a seed. And the meaning of the seed is actually the tree that grows from it. So we can invest all kinds of meaning into that sound. And what meaning we put into it is what we're eventually going to grow. I think it's a really beautiful image is to think of sound as a seed, and the result is the tree, taking us back to nature, taking us back to the idea of existence. So when we think about that, we can also think about what's our affinity to mantras? What are the mantras that you really like? What are the sounds that you really like and gravitate to? And without thinking too much, let those be exactly what you're drawn to. The reason it works so well is because we as human beings are made up of anywhere from 70% to 85% water, depending on the science that you read. So as human beings, we're made up of water. And what we know is that water conducts sound. There are many scientific experiments that have been done. And you might have heard of this Japanese scientist, Emoto. And what he did was studied water crystals under a microscope. And half of them, he said, loving, beautiful, precious words to. And the other half, he condemned, he criticized, he judged, he told them they were bad and ugly and wrong. And guess what happened? When he later put those water crystals under a microscope, the ones that had been adored and spoken lovingly to and appreciated, they all grew into beautiful crystals. And it was remarkable. And on the same side, those ones that were judged or criticized or spoken to harshly with a strong tone of voice all looked a little deformed, didn't blossom into fully, what's the word, symmetric kind of designs. They crumpled unto themselves. And that was part of, that's, our science of understanding that when we speak something, the tone that we use and the words that we choose have a big impact on the feeling that they create, not just for us, but also who we connect to. So that's a big reason why mantras work. The second piece is how to use mantra. And the idea here is when you're thinking about mantra, when you're exploring with this particular form of yogic science, is to create a state for those mantras. And what I mean by that is meditation is a really perfect place to insert mantra or to sandwich the mantra. Let me explain that a little bit more. When we take that same analogy of a seed, if we want something to grow, we need to give it fertile ground to grow in. And that means making sure the soil is moist, it has a little bit of water in it, it's loose enough for the seed to find itself rooting, and it needs sunlight. And in the same way, our minds need the same kind of preparation. And so the idea of sitting quietly, of concentrating, of deepening the breath, aligning with a sense of openness and willingness, then creates fertile ground in the mind for that seed to grow, for that mantra to grow. So when we have a sense of stillness, when we are preparing for meditation, sitting for meditation, and then introduce mantra, we are creating that fertile ground for the sprouting, for the seedling, and eventually for the tree to grow. And so again, it doesn't matter necessarily which mantra, although we all may be attracted to different sounds. The idea is to sit with intention in preparation and then to welcome the energy of that seed so that it can grow. And that's like feeding the energy of the soul, because our personalities have limitations. We have certain beliefs, we have certain patterns of behavior, but the soul is willing to grow as long as we give it fertile ground to grow in. And so that's what mantra, how to use mantra and where we can experience it. So the idea here is to empty the mind a little bit, prepare the mind so that that seed can start to flourish. There are a few different ways to explore mantra in terms of sound. So we're going to do that today. And we'll start with some English mantras and talk about affirmations, and then I'll explore some Kundalini Yoga mantras with you so that you have the experience to build off of. So part of this discussion is to really think about what's the difference between mantra and affirmations. Affirmations are repetitive words that we say to ourselves. Here's one that I have heard many, many times. Me, 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 me. That is getting very self-absorbed and using the mantra, what about me? What about me? And we know that when we say things like that to ourselves, we start to close down our experience. We start to feel that smallness inside of ourselves. Similarly, when we use mantras like, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, guess what happens? we get busy. That's right. And when we say those things over and over to ourselves, we're affirming, we are confirming that experience. So there is a little disconnect between what we say and what we're trying to explore. So instead of saying, I'm so busy, I have a lot on my plate and I'm going to get through. I have lots to do and all of it will get done. Those are ways to turn something that feels pressurized, something that feels overwhelming, into something that has a little bit more space. In other words, we're confirming the fact of possibility. And I think that's really a powerful idea. There are also affirmations that we use that also engage the mind. So something like, I'm happy, I'm healthy. And while it sounds simple, there might be a place inside of you that's saying, but I'm not happy, but I'm actually not healthy. My leg hurts, or my blood sugars are too high, or I have high blood pressure. So we're feeling in contradiction to what it is that we're speaking out loud. And that's why affirmation doesn't necessarily work, because there's a contradiction between what we're trying to say to ourselves and what we actually believe. So, part of what we want to do with mantra is to bypass some of these mental controls or mental validations that we want to put into place and actually look for the growth. And that's why, for me personally, I find mantras that aren't in English a lot easier because I'm not getting caught up in what it actually means. I have no literal translation for it, and my mind doesn't rebel. So I want to just offer that to you, that while it may seem outside of our culture to use languages that we don't necessarily understand or are not part of our immediate experience, that there's something liberating about allowing ourselves to use sound in a way that is affirming. And we know this because we have probably heard chimes and bells and singing bowls and crystal bowls, all kinds of sounds, piano, harp, drums, all of these sounds that don't necessarily have a literal translation, but somehow speak to our human experience. If you think about drums, for example, I have a couple back here in my office. This is a new form of meditation that I'm exploring with. Drum beats sound like heartbeats, and it affirms our experience. It reminds us, oh, yes, I am beating in time with a universal rhythm. And when we find that universal rhythm, it's calming, it is productive. There is no resistance because it is who we are. And so that's a different kind of sound vibration, but still the steadiness of it, the openness of it, and the calming and affirming nature of it is really important. So, having said that, there are some mantras that are in English and in the Kundalini Yoga tradition, and I just want to introduce them to you so you have them. The first one that I really love is, I am bountiful, I am beautiful, I am bliss, I am, I am. So let's chant that a few times together. I am bountiful. I am beautiful. I am bliss. I am, I am. I am bountiful. I am beautiful. I am bliss. I am, I am. I am bountiful. I am beautiful. I am bliss. I am, I am. Take a deep inhale and exhale. Inhale very deeply and exhale. Feel now into the words. Feel now into the invitation to feel those elements of our true nature. And it is true, there may be points in your life where you were told, you're not beautiful, you're not bountiful, you don't have a lot, there's no money to spare, you don't have the fanciest house. And then bliss. What is bliss? I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm blah. And it's true that those experiences, those counter experiences exist. And at the same time, the opposite can be true. So part of it is exposure, allowing ourselves to feel these feelings, notice what comes up when we feel those feelings, the contradiction, and then also taking on a meditative practice to open the door. Why do I believe that this is not true about who I am? Why can't I believe it to be true? And how do I move into a place of believing it's true? And that's where mantra, particularly in English, can give a lot of validation and can give a lot of room for growth. You can see it right there. So that's one in School of Kundalini Yoga and Meditation. That's one. I'm bountiful, I'm beautiful, I am bliss. And there is a few others. So let's try this one out. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Close your eyes now. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Last one. Peace begins with me. Take a deep inhale and exhale. Inhale very deeply and exhale. And you can feel in there also the peace of it, the reality of it, the motivation of it, and the clarity of it. Peace doesn't come from the outside world. Peace comes from an inner state of being. And while this is a lofty idea, while this is maybe a stretch, it is also a place to aspire to. That in situations that are around us, in our relationships, in our finances, in our careers, in our day to day lives, that the actual change begins with the person who is noticing where there is disharmony and affirming to the self that I am the creator of this reality. And I'm using these English words so that we can relate meaning to it. We can have a lived experience of it that is right here in the present moment. Now, I want to explore with you the language of Gurmukhi, which is the sacred language of the Sikh tradition. This spiritual tradition, originating in India, belonging in the northern part of India, is where Kundalini Yoga gets its language origins from. So when you're practicing Kundalini Yoga, this is the language that you're exploring, especially when you're tuning in using a beginning mantra and at the end of practice, and oftentimes along the way during a practice. So this is a really good time to explore those mantras, a few of them, so that you can get a lived experience of that. The first mantra that I want to introduce you to is the Adi Mantra. The Adi Mantra is the beginning of all Kundalini Yoga practices. It has a powerful benefit in starting anything, whether you're driving, starting to cook dinner, starting to eat, working on a project, doing a presentation. It is calling in the inner teacher. It is asking for our highest consciousness to be present in the moment to guide the next steps. In other words, what I want to do when I'm calling that particular meditation or mantra is to put my personality to the side and ask for what is highest and best for my soul's evolution. And you can see when we're practicing a form of yoga, that's a really important experience because our personality is in charge in so many other different ways. And sometimes the personality has limitations on what it can believe to be true, what it's willing to do, what it's able to do, what it wants to do. And soul self says, we're here for the learning. And so this is a way of tapping into that openness. Let's try this mantra together. Ong Namo Gurudev Namo. Ong Namo Gurudev Namo. One more time. Ong Namo Gurudev Namo. Beautiful. So those are the sounds. When we're chanting it to begin a practice, it becomes a little bit more singing like. I'll explain that to you and show you how it's done. These sounds loosely mean I bow to the teacher within. I call on my highest consciousness. Ong, all that is manifest in the universe. Namo, all that is welcoming into me. Guru Dev, whatever takes us from darkness to light. Namo, I call. Let's begin that. We start with pressing our palms together with the thumbs pressed into the bone of the chest. Please join me. It's really beautiful to learn this mantra. You can listen the first time and then do your best to make the sound with your mouth. It is, just before we begin, there are 84 meridian points in the mouth. And as you move your tongue in the mouth, right now I'm speaking English, and so some of those meridian points are being stimulated. And when I call on and use a sacred mantra, I'm working on those meridian points in a very particular kind of way, sending a call to the universe and drawing an experience back. It's like an attractive force. Sitting up tall and straight, closing the eyes. Take a deep inhale and exhale. This is the meditative moment. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and feel the energy running through your spine, from the base of your spine all the way up through the top of your head. And then close your eyes, concentrate on your third eye in the middle of your forehead. Good. And let's use the sound now. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Two more times. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Inhale very deeply. And exhale completely. Feel the energy of that sound vibration. Notice your experience. Beautiful. It is attuning ourselves to something bigger than our lived experience. So good for you. If you were able to chant, amazing. If you're developing the courage to use these sounds and to use your voice, just know that it has a lasting effect. So listening is great, and joining in allows you to open up your lung capacity and feel that vibratory frequency. Good. So that begins the practice of every single Kundalini Yoga practice. Along the way, you'll also find at the end of practice a beautiful mantra called Satnam. Sat meaning truth, Nam meaning name. Truth is my name. And a refinement that I've heard recently is the truth is there is only one. In other words, the separations, the divisions, the ways that we keep ourselves apart from each other are merely illusions. And when we chant Satnam, we remind ourselves of our participation, our activation in all that is living and being. It's that knowingness really a comfort. I find it comforting that with 8 billion of us on the planet, 8 billion humans, and all the life forms, the plants, the animals, the seeds, the nurturing, the grasp that everything, that we're all connected in multiple different ways, including our choice to be here on this planet. So very powerful. Sat Nam. We'll find it in lots of different Kundalini Yoga practices, particularly at the end to close off a practice, to bow in reverence to all the teachings that have come before us, to our sacredness, and to the reverence we have for ourselves and each other. Long Sat, short Nam. Let's practice that and notice the sound vibration. So as you chant, it's always a good idea to bring your shoulders level, keep your spine very straight, and then press your thumbs into the bone of your chest. When you do this, you start to feel the vibration running from your the cavities in your face, the spaces that create sound in your face, your vocal cords, and then your heart space. So lots of science going on here. Remember the meridians in your mouth. Lots of science here to affirm and to uplift. So from here, the sound is a long, short Nam, closing your eyes so you can hear it fully and completely. We'll do this 3 times. Sa Nam. Sa Nam. Sa Nam. Taking a moment to let the sound enter into your experience. Good. Take a deep inhale and exhale. Inhale very deeply and exhale. The sound of Satnam. This is also a greeting. This is also a way of showing reverence to another person, to offer the truth. I use it as a walking meditation. So as I step, Sat Nam, Sat Nam, Sat Nam becomes very steadying, becomes part of how I pace my breath. It becomes how I pace my walk. You can use mantra whenever you are in moments of stillness or you want to activate these feelings that are coming up right now. When you're in the shower, when you're folding laundry, when you're doing dishes, these are ways of steadying the mind, reminding ourselves that we are part of something much bigger and to create clarity. Now, part of Satnam is the next meditation, and then we'll do a short practice after that using a chanting meditation, is the mantra found in Kirtan Kriya, and that is Sa Ta Na Ma. Sa Ta Na Ma. Just to remind you, Sa Ta Na Ma. Kirtan Kriya is very established practice in Kundalini Yoga. You can find that here on my channel. It's part of a practice called the Power Pack. Beautiful. This is one of my favorite mantras, favorite meditations, and I did it for 1,000 days. So I feel like we're buddies. So Kirtan Kriya, these 4 sounds, Sa, Ta, Na, Ma, loosely translated, universe, life, death, rebirth. And when we use that mantra, we start to repattern our brains. So that sound not only causes an influence in the facial cavity, but also respond to different aspects of the brain that are attuned to sound. And that is our learning, that is our sensory perceptions, and also our ability to vibrate and also call in experiences. So that particular meditation, universe, life, death, rebirth, is a cycle. It is a way of bringing in the new by letting go of the old. Really powerful and potent. Now, here's the part that always that made me pause when I first heard this explanation. The mantra Sa Ta Na Ma. That's the sound. universe, life, death, rebirth. And so where the explanation is Satnam is the full mantra. And when we break it down into those smaller components, these become the seeds. So in the early part of this conversation, we talked about each mantra being a seed, and the meaning is what gives the tree, is what the meaning creates. So each of these components, sa, ta, na, ma, are the seeds of that particular meditation. This is called a bij mantra, a seed mantra. It's beautiful, it's potent, it's a very powerful way to understand what the mantra is creating and how to think about it. So these are the seeds, sa, ta, na, ma. So there you go. Beautiful sound vibration. You can find that again. You can find that in Kirtan Kriya, and Kirtan Kriya is part of a video that I have created here on my YouTube channel called The Power Pack. Go and enjoy, go and explore. Now let's do a meditation together. And this one is using the sound Ong, O-N-G. Oftentimes people ask, how come in Kundalini Yoga we use the sound Ong versus Om, which is what most people are more familiar with in other yogic traditions. So the sound of Om, O-M, or A-H-M, is linking to a sound all that is unmanifest in the universe, Om. And the sound Ong, O-N-G, is the sound linking to all that is manifest in the universe. So with a slight variation on sound, Om versus Ong, we have a different spiritual tradition and a different way to evoke experience and creation. Powerful. So the sound O-N-G, Ong. Let's try that a few times. So in your mouth, Ong. Try it a few more times. Ong. And you can feel that running here in your throat. You may even be able to feel it here in your nasal cavity, or maybe in the top of your head itself. Om. Sometimes I feel it back here, depending on how loudly I'm chanting. And all of that you can tell is feeling stimulation in the brain cavity itself. Powerful. So we're using the sound of Ong, and we're using a mudra. Now in this mudra, we're going to fold down the index fingers, fold down the middle finger and the baby finger, while keeping the ring fingers extended, almost like we're pointing outwards. We're sending a directional force. And then the thumbs stay rooted into the bone of the chest. Again, we're increasing vibration when we're placing the thumbs here. And we're also making a connection with the body and the vibration itself. Here, we're going to close our eyes, sit up tall and straight, and chant the sound Ong 5 times. This is the Kundalini meditation for absolutely powerful energy. See if you can sense that feeling for yourself. I'm going to chant. Please join me. Closing your eyes now, sitting up tall and straight. Inhale. Exhale. And let's begin. Om. 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 Last one. Om. Taking a moment now to feel the energy of your creation. And relax your hands down. Ong, all that is manifest in the universe. And there you go. A sampling of what mantra is, sound vibration, how to use it, when to use it, what they are in English, how to differentiate between a mantra and an affirmation, and then some deep dive into Kundalini Yoga mantras and a little bit of practice. Lots of love to you. My name is Salimah, yoga therapist. If you found this helpful, like, share, comment, do the things. And to learn much more about mantra chanting, join Kundalini Yoga Teacher Training, a powerful way to deep dive into all the yogic traditions that are here in the practice and to learn more about how to use them for your daily life. Until next time, lots of love.